Well, we shot the movie in Dallas. We did go scout Detroit with Paul, although it did fairly well in the sort of seedy urban department. It didn't have any kind of futuristic skyline or any kind of modern look to it at all.
Robocop was shot in Dallas from August through October of 1986, which is like the most humid and the hottest, steamiest, nastiest time to be in that part of the world. The temperature on the days that they were shooting there was about 120 to 130 degrees inside. Peter was literally losing pounds of weight every day out of water dehydration. He was constantly having to be hydrated.
Peter had a mime coach by the name of Moni Yakim, and he wanted to work with Moni on practicing basic robotic moves and to create a character through movement. Peter and Moni rehearsed for many, many weeks before the start of filming. Rob Bottin was supposed to deliver the suit about 2 or 3 weeks before principal photography, but as these things go, the suit arrived on the day we needed it to be shot.
Rob was very much delayed because of our problems, isn't it, that we had created partially ourselves, and that's why the costume came so late to the set.
And it took Peter 11 hours to get into the suit the first time because everything needed to be fitted and adjusted and changed and shaved. So by the time Peter walked out of the trailer door 11 hours later, he was in a complete state because everything he had rehearsed with Moni didn't work in this suit.
We had a terrible time and we had to stop production because we got into a conflict, but the conflict was basically because he said, I can't do it, and I don't know how to walk, and basically, and we said, and the production said, well, I have to shoot, you know, no time. And he said, well, but I didn't get time to practice. And we said, well, that's a pity. We have to shoot anyhow. It was so devastating. It was so frustrating, and we were so insensitive that we didn't understand that that could not be done. It was only later that I realized that we had done something completely inappropriate, and that Peter Weller had all the right of the world to protest. And so ultimately Mike Medavoy said, okay, let's stop a couple of days, and you work with Peter. So we started then to work with the system, with the costume, and we had the video camera, we showed it to him, and slowly he got the confidence and the ability to do it so that it looked good.
Paul Verhoeven and Rob Bottin weren't even speaking to each other during the entire course of the film. In fact, Rob stopped even coming down there at all and turned the whole thing over to what we called the Robo-Team.
Action will be everybody shooting, yeah?
Hey!
And background!
We took over 10, 12 empty buildings and dressed them and then had them rigged to explode. We were all over the city blowing things up. We're on the news every night. Something was exploding or there was something going on.
Get in!
Now fill it up on number 7.
Well, the explosion at the gas station was big enough that it did manage to set the building on fire. The fire department did threaten to shut us down. And our cameraman, Jos Vacano, said, well, you know, that explosion, I don't think it's registered on film, you know. It wasn't really big enough, I think, for the camera to see. So we looked at the dailies, and what you see is what's in the film. Robocop was a terrible experience in the production. I mean, everyone had a terrible time. It was hot. People were aggressively unpleasant. No one was getting along. The picture was over budget. It was over schedule. People from Orion would come down and say, stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding. And then they would fly off, and the next weekend they'd fly down again. And it was 6-day weeks for when we were in Pittsburgh. And people were just exhausted and ready to kill each other.
Blow this cocksucker's head off.
When I came back, people said I looked dead, and I really was white. I mean, it was really hard.
Working on Robocop was like being the victim of a violent crime. You just try to blank it out of your mind and memory. Well, I swore I'd never make another picture.
Fellow executives, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the future of law enforcement. Ed 209.
Ed 209 was supposed to look like these kind of weird Japanese toys that were these big robots that had gun arms, and I just said it looked something like that. And then I said I always had this idea that it was kind of like it had a shark mouth, and it had these double machine guns, and it looked like you know, the kind of what do you call the gun pods and the rocket pods you saw on the side of Huey attack copters.
There's like a certain dumbness to it as well, something like a utilitarian stupidity to the thing.
I felt that basically having this kind of feeling that there might be sensors here, but what does he see exactly? He's partially blind for what's happening in the world, you know. The law enforcement has a side that's blind, and that basically will just do like the Germans did in the Second World War. When the commanding officers say shoot these people, they would just do it.
You know, you've got something that looks really swell, and in an Ed 209's case, it does look ferocious and it does look intimidating, which was intentionally built into it, but it doesn't operate. It doesn't work very well.
It was supposed to be a big American product, you know? Again, it's a big thing, it's heavy.
Who cares if it worked or not?
Up until very recently, now that's exactly what you could say about American cars.
Because bigger is better. 6000 SUX, an American tradition.
Automobiles get styled, you know, to be emotionally, you know, appealing, and it's kind of strange that, you know, military equipment gets a little bit of that same treatment.
The front grille in Ed's face for the longest time was the opposite way it is now. It looked like he had a smile. We knew something was wrong with it. And one day we went, oh yeah, if we turn the grill upside down, he has a menacing presence.
What is that grill? You wouldn't put a big radiator on the face of a tank. You know, you might as well put, you know, paint a bullseye around it and say, like, hit me here.
What we were shooting was just a prop, but it couldn't really act.
People had to go up to it or stand next to it or touch it. That was the prop.
209 is currently programmed for urban pacification.
Paul Verhoeven, he was screaming. He was like, every time the robot was supposed to be moving, you know, he would act it out. And he would run through the movements and stuff. And if people weren't afraid of a giant prop, they were certainly afraid of him.
At that time, there were no computer-generated images possible. This was just stop motion.
I didn't know anything about stop motion. I had no idea. I forgot for a long time that I had to solve that too.
There really wasn't a lot of money to work with, so we couldn't get into really any fancy blue screen photography. And the only way at that time of creating these artificial characters was either putting a guy in a suit or building a big prop or doing a stop motion animation puppet. The process of rear screen photography, which is what we used on Robocop, you shoot a photographic background plate, project it onto a translucent screen, build a stage, put your puppet in front of that, stop motion puppet in front of that, light that puppet so that it matches the background, and have any foreground objects that you need to, and shoot that.
Phil he's like another actor, and he delivers another performance. And Ed 209 was always, to me, the kind of the clown. That whole gag of falling down the stairs, people find that so amusing that he can't go down the stairs. And I think it wouldn't have been as funny if Phil hadn't been there to do. I mean, there's a shot where the thing is reaching and it's going, and that's Phil.
We actually built a scale version of the stairs. So got all the dimensions and you know, whatnot from the staircase that they were using and matched the paint and stuff and built a miniature set, probably about 4 feet square. And we basically set the puppet up at the top of the stairs and flipped him down the stairs.
There is, I believe, 1, possibly 2 stop-motion shots of Robocop.
When you have Robocop right in front, he used a little miniature guy. He had to help push up the gun and blow his arm off.
The final scene where Ed walks in from off camera, and I got a call in the morning from Davison, and John said, you know, can you do something funny? So, you know, I kind of backed some stuff off and found like this little fan and glued that onto Ed 209 and just kept the stupid little whirly gig, you know, spinning the whole time. And pretty much pantomime a drunk gag, you know, where he hiccups and then he falls over and does this little